Tucker's interview of Nick Fuentes as what they see as their opportunity to finally destroy Tucker. That's when this campaign exploded. Tucker is flirting with Nazism. He hates Jews, canceling people, deplatforming people, trying to silence people because of their views is a left-wing tactic of debate repression. That to me sounds like a pretty direct antithesis of America First, but according to Randy Fine, you cannot be in MAGA. Tucker Carlson no longer in MAGA unless you love Israel.
The neocons and Zionists are all up in arms against Tucker Carlson again. What a surprise. This has brought all the usual suspects to focus all their anger on him, like Randy Fine, who said he was the most dangerous anti-Semite in America, or Ben Shapiro, that said he was destroying America. It's so absurd, but in this clip, Glenn gets into why this cancel campaign will not work against Tucker Carlson, and why this strategy of dealing with people you don't disagree with just hasn't paid dividends for the Zionists using this strategy. So let's watch. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
About a week ago or so, on October 27th, Tucker Carlson interviewed Nick Fuentes. Nick has been on a lot of other shows prior to Tucker interviewing him. He was on our show, I guess about 6 weeks ago, was on Patrick Bet-David's show, that podcast that I just did when I was in Florida. He's been around because he has a very large following, principally of young men, of young disaffected men, young right-wing men, young conservative men. The show that he does, the America First show, is huge. Everywhere online, everything he does is viral. You ask people under 30 and they will know Nick Fuentes a lot more readily than what a lot of people would consider famous people in politics or media who are above the age of, say, 50, who nobody under 30 knows. You cannot deny his influence no matter what you think about him. And if someone is influential, the job of a journalist is to understand what their thought is, to understand their worldview, to challenge it in the places they think need challenging. And that's exactly what Tucker proceeded to do. So we had Nick Fuentes on the Tucker Carlson show, and here you see a thumbnail of it. This is from October 27th. And obviously Tucker show is watched by a lot of people. It's the #2 podcast in the country after Joe Rogan. But I want you to take a look at the number of people who watched Tucker's interview with Nick Fuentes. And this is just on YouTube. This interview appeared on multiple platforms. I'm not even sure that YouTube is their most watched platform. It might be, but I know there's others like Spotify, Apple, X, and other places where these interviews appears that are watched by huge numbers of people as well. So just on YouTube alone, this interview with Nick Fuentes had 5.1 million views. And that's just in less than a week, nearly 5.2 million views in a week. There aren't many interviews, certainly political interviews, that get anywhere near that level, those kind of ratings, that level of attention.
Yeah, that's correct. That is a lot of views, and I'm totally with Glenn about the responsibility of journalists talking to figures that are controversial, talk about where your differences are, push back when needed, align where there is alignment. Frederick Douglass famously said, "I will unite with anybody to do good, but nobody to do wrong." And that's what Glenn did sitting down with him. That's what Dave Smith did sitting down with him. That's what Tucker did. And for all these neocon Zionists that say, oh, this was a total softball, Tucker didn't push back, they didn't watch the interview. They truly didn't. Tucker pushed back fiercely, calling it unchristian to blame Judaism for, the political influence of Zionism and neocons and the wars on terror, and saying that, hey, Nick, despite what this kind of mantra you developed, a lot of the best critics of Israel are Jewish. He cited Jeff Sachs as an example. So there was a lot of pushback, despite what you hear from neocon blood-soaked maniacs like Randy Fine and Lindsey Graham.
People are watching because they're interested. And they're interested because these topics matter to them. And they matter to them, and they're interested in this because Nick Fuentes has become an influential voice, no matter what your views are. And Tucker did what journalists should do. We put him on our show as well, and there was a huge amount of interest in that as well. After Tucker interviewed Nick Fuentes, a lot of people who Tucker had been very critical of, people like Ted Cruz, you probably remember that very aggressive and for Ted Cruz, extremely embarrassing interview where Tucker interviewed Ted Cruz. A few months ago, Ted Cruz hasn't stopped talking about Tucker, attacking Tucker since.
Yeah, he has Tucker derangement syndrome. You can see this on Twitter. It's basically daily anti-Tucker Carlson posts. And yeah, I'd be frustrated if I got dismantled by Tucker too when Ted Cruz is saying, hey, you're so obsessed with Israel. After 3 minutes, following his statement of, hey, I made it my chief prerogative when I became a United States Senator to be the most pro-Israel United States Senator. And, when he said that, Tucker's just all about the Jews and blaming the Jews when Tucker said no such thing, but was criticizing the influence of a foreign government in our country, robbing us of our sovereignty. Ted Cruz has never gotten over that moment. He was humiliated. Basically, all of America that watched that was fence sitters or, skeptical of this, sided with Tucker over it, obviously so, and it's shifting in that direction in American culture in general. We're just not gonna look past this glaring hypocrisy that is the Israel First creed.
Like Dan Crenshaw, mostly like the pro-establishment, pro-war wing of the Republican Party that really believes in the traditional pre-Trump ideology of the Republican Party, but because you can't survive in Republican politics unless you pretend that you support Trump, they all pretend they like Trump. But they hate Trump's foreign policy instincts to the extent it's not interventionist. They hate his anti-free market economic policies like tariffs, but they can't really say it. But a lot of those people were the ones who hated Tucker, and Tucker has been very critical of them for supporting an ideology that it seemed like Republican voters wanted to dispense with. And they used Tucker's interview of Nick Fuentes as what they see as their opportunity to finally destroy Tucker. That's when this campaign exploded. Tucker is flirting with Nazism. He hates Jews. These are the kinds of things that conservatives have always expelled from their movement. William Buckley did it. This whole line.
Yeah, that is the new strategy. Of course, there's always a new cancel Tucker step in this campaign to get him canceled, which isn't going to work, by the way. We have the metrics to show that, and the independent media has guaranteed that the Zionists have, dirt all over their face, blood all over their face, whereas Tucker is elevated to a new position, even since being fired from Fox News. That is the case. And to be clear, these neocons don't support free market policies. They believe in sanctions regimes against foreign countries, building up an empire that's costly and it wouldn't serve public interests or any kind of, consumer desire to want that sort of thing. Dumping money down the drain for empire building schemes, about 10 trillion total in all the war on terror, causing 5 million deaths and leading to a national debt of 38 trillion, while the central bank and the Federal Reserve prints fiat to finance that, levying the invisible inflation tax on all of us. That's what they want. So they have no moral ground to stand on. Americans have rejected them, and Glenn is right. The neocons around Trump, like Lindsey Graham and like Marco Rubio, have steered him successfully in many cases to a neocon direction. Many of those people, almost all of them, were never Trumpers from 2016. Remember little Marco, that line that Trump made? That was Trump at his best, but now he's won over by these people.
That he's become a hate monger. He's become somebody beyond the pale of decency. This person who until 2 years ago was the consensus pick for probably certainly the most influential, maybe the most respected media voice for conservative politics and the MAGA movement has now become beyond the pale after questioning U.S. support for Israel for 2 years. A major grievance of the American right over the last decade, a major principle that they upheld was that canceling people, deplatforming people, trying to silence people because of their views, especially when those views are representative of a lot of people's views, is a left-wing tactic of debate repression. And all the Heritage Foundation really did is affirm it in the context of Israel, of Nick Fuentes saying, look, we don't agree with Nick Fuentes in a lot of what he says. In fact, we abhor a lot of what he says. But of course, Tucker did nothing wrong in interviewing somebody with his influence. And this is so basic. I mean, journalists interview bad people all the time, if you think Nick Fuentes is qualified as that.
Yeah, this idea that Nick Fuentes is uniquely evil, far surpassing all the uniquely evil some of these people have debated, like literal communists and trans rights activists and people that really don't agree with them in many different ways. This is notwithstanding my own views on those subjects, but to believe that it's Nick Fuentes that's beyond the pale when they interview literal war criminals stained with blood on their hands from decisions that have led millions to their deaths in the war on terror. But we're supposed to believe this kid with impure thoughts, and many of them I do think are impure. I don't agree with him on some of his viewpoints. I've made that clear in my own videos. I'm sure that's true about just about every American. But at the same time, he's not guilty of killing multitudes of people like many of these neocons themselves. And we're going to consider him off limits. Glenn is right. This was a liberal debate tactic to try to shut down debate, avoid taking on the arguments, and just pushing these people aside, shoving them under the rug, breaking them down, destroying their lives, making sure they get canceled or debanked, and things like that. It's what has led to Nick's ascension. It's Streisanded affected the hell out of him. And what that is when you focus so much on a guy and try to dismiss him in that way, that people, take notice and say, hey, why are they so dismissive of this guy? I'm going to read up on his views and watch him. That's what's being done. That's what has been done. They've tried to do it to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson too. It's just not working. These people are incredibly popular, and they can't just be shut down by the media establishment anymore.
They interview foreign leaders who are charged with war crimes, like Benjamin Netanyahu, or whoever, take your pick. Journalists interviewed Al-Qaeda leaders. Journalists interview all sorts of people. That's part of the job. And you ask them questions so that the public can make decisions about it. So all the Heritage Foundation did here is say Tucker was absolutely within his rights to talk to somebody like Nick Fuentes and ask him questions about his worldview, given his influence. Number two, everybody has the right to question a foreign country, any foreign country. We even have the right to question our own government. If we have the right to question our own government, of course we have the right to question Israel.
Absolutely, but it seems like Americans have less right to question Israel than to question American states. There's wide-scale boycotts against individual American states, usually on kind of cultural war, dividing lines, over abortion or immigration, or this state has too big of a welfare state, or they don't have good enough gun laws. And we could boycott those states. Does that lead to that person's life being ruined, smeared as an anti-Semite, say they're guilty of blood libel? No, that only pertains to critics of Israel. Glenn is totally right about this. And it's because of the stranglehold of the Israel lobby in the United States. It just is.
That was it. And for those two previously uncontroversial points, but extremely controversial when applied to the case of Israel and people who question support for Israel in the United States, that not only becomes controversial, but radioactive to the point people are quitting and losing their jobs. And it's absolutely driving a massive wedge inside the conservative movement. And one of the dominant features of conservative discourse now is to just scream racist and bigot and anti-Semite at everybody who disagrees with the Ben Shapiro view about Israel, which had been the bipartisan view in Washington.
That's what's so ironic. This is what they denounced from the liberal establishment doing this, yelling racism anytime you pointed out, metrics about, fatherless black children or something like that, or yelled sexist if you talked about disparities between the differences in men and women in general, or if you were a homophobe, if you talked about issues related to that. This was their tactic that's just being adopted by these right-wing Zionists who act indistinguishable from liberal wokesters.
And so now you hear people like Ben Shapiro who are mocking racism claims and bigotry claims from every other group to which he doesn't belong. Oh, that's snowflake behavior. It's just self-victimization. These people just want to have excuses for their own failures.
Okay. I love his Ben Shapiro impression. I almost spit out that water, man. That was so funny. I love it when Glenn does it.
And now suddenly, in so much of what Ben Shapiro and people like him say, you will always inevitably find racism accusations against people who are critical of Israel. And that's, of course, an accusation he applied not just to Nick Fuentes, but also Tucker Carlson in decreeing that Tucker should no longer be welcomed in the conservative movement as a result of his views on Israel. Here's what he said.
Hey, folks, I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend. And Tucker...
Well, the American people are saying otherwise, Ben, and I think if he really did, represent those views, he'd be disregarded wholesale by the American people. And by the way, he's doing far better than you, so who are you to tell him that it's him causing the schism? What about the neocons that defied the old right sensibilities of not getting into foreign wars like you always wanted to, like you supported every single time, like Iraq and Syria and Libya and Iran? You wanted regime change in Iran. You begged Trump to do that. You still want that. But as of now, hasn't happened. Well, egg's on your face and not Tucker's. You were wrong in every single case. We're not going back to the neocon paradigm. I'm sorry.
Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation.
Is there anyone who actually believes that it's some kind of unrelated coincidence that, again, nobody like Ben Shapiro would have ever spoken of Tucker Carlson in those terms for decades until he started criticizing Israel? And are we really supposed to be amenable to the argument that the reason all these people are turning on Tucker and trying to destroy him and expel him from the conservative movement isn't because he criticizes Israel? Speaking of Israel...
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. That really is the only big topic in which Tucker has been more outspoken against lately compared to previous to the last 2 years, being very critical of Israel and especially Israel's influence in the United States. And what that brings, what it forces Americans to have to come to grips with, prioritization, bastardization in his mind, thinking that, hey, like any normal, reasonable person, we should prioritize the interests of our country over this foreign country that, by the way, sucks us into wars and is committing a genocide. What a radical viewpoint. That's really the only direction in which Tucker has shifted in recent years in terms of him being outspoken on issues. And then all of a sudden you're seeing all of these claims and campaigns to cancel him. It's not really a mystery about why, and it's not because he likes Hitler. I'm sorry, Ben. You're not going to get us with that one. Americans see right through that. It's so absurd.
Israel fanatics and putting Israel first, here's Congressman Randy Fine, who I should note has a primary challenger in the Republican Party. He was just elected. He filled, I forget, either Matt Gaetz' seat or Mike Waltz's seat. When Trump chose Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, Matt Gaetz left Congress, Mike Waltz was National Security Advisor. Those opened up 2 seats in Congress. Randy Fine ran in a special election for 1 and won, but now he has a regular election in next year's midterms. He has a primary challenger to his, let's call it to his right, a kind of America First populist. And President Trump, despite how single-mindedly fixated Randy Fine is on Israel, is not only endorsing Trump, but is raising money for him at the same time that he's trying to remove Thomas Massie from the Congress.
Surprise, surprise, he's endorsing Lindsey Graham and Randy Fine and dragging anyone like Thomas Massie who dares defy his expenditures, his war-making, etc. That's exactly what's happening.
Randy Fine spoke at the Republican Jewish Coalition a couple of days ago, and he also talked about Tucker, and this is what he had to say about him.
Oh, great.
Tucker
This is
Carlson
great.
is the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. He has chosen to take on the mantle of leader of a modern-day Hitler Youth, to broadcast and feature those who celebrate the Nazis, those who call for the extermination of Israel, to defend Hamas, to even criticize President Trump for stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions. Friends, make no mistake, Tucker is not MAGA.
Look at this. It's so astroturfed. I can't believe even this audience just doesn't burst out laughing at how ridiculous this is. Yeah, Tucker Carlson's the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. You have no idea what exists out there, man. This is so absurd. He's leading a modern-day Hitler Youth movement. Yeah, dude, we're not going to take that seriously whatsoever. And look at this, all these people holding signs, clearly astroturfed. You see this lady up toward the front right, hey, cheer louder, clap louder. Reminds me of that moment where Jeb Bush stopped his speech and said, please clap. Even this audience isn't really buying it. It's so fake and phony, and it's not going to work. And these people just deserve pure ridicule. People like Randy Fine that are monsters, that when someone put a response to one of his tweets saying, how do you sleep at night knowing that so many Palestinian babies are being plucked up from the rubble, and they attached a picture of that, he said, just fine, thank you. That's what we're dealing with here. This guy is a blood-soaked maniac. He's not going to get Tucker canceled. I'm sorry.
I mean, when you see how many people high up in the conservative movement in Washington politics are united and assembled to destroy Tucker as an anti-Semite, you understand the magnitude of it. It's why we're covering it so extensively. And in addition to the fact that I think it says a lot about our politics. And it's just bizarre that someone who arrived in Congress about 3 seconds ago says Tucker Carlson is not MAGA. I guess it's worth remembering that MAGA stands for Make America First Again.
Make America Great Again, but we'll let that one slide. It's the same kind of theme, right? But that is ironic, right? This guy that no one knew about. Prior to that, he made some money in gambling, and then he went to Congress, and he's the one trying to cancel Tucker when Tucker's one of the most successful podcasters in the world. Glenn produced the stats. He's the #2 podcast right now. And we're just not buying it. The 50-point swing in favor of sympathy toward the Palestinians since October 7th just defies all kind of boundaries of what could be possible for Americans shifting in this direction. We're not going back. We're not becoming neocons again. We're not Israel first anymore. You're not going to win.
And Randy Fine has devoted his whole adult life to Israel, has a gigantic flag of Israel in his office. I don't ever recall Tucker devoting himself to a foreign country or even close to that the way that Randy Fine is. And yet, again, it's not just that in order to be an American patriot, you have to love Israel, but apparently in order to be America first, you not only have to love Israel, but want the U.S. to finance and arm and deploy military assets to protect Israel, to enable their wars. That, to me, sounds like a pretty direct antithesis of America first, but according to Randy Fine, you cannot be in MAGA. Tucker Carlson no longer MAGA unless you love Israel.
Yeah, that's exactly what's at the heart of this. It's an Israel first mentality that they see is losing a grip on the right when it previously had it. Throughout my whole lifetime, it had it. I'm glad to say I kind of departed from that mindset in 2004. I was once a Zionist and neocon, if you can believe that. I've said that in other videos, and some people are surprised, but I was. It was backward. It was warped thinking. I parroted all the propaganda from Wolfowitz and Cheney and, Rumsfeld on that. And, it's still deplorable. It's led us to disastrous situations, and that's what's happening here. People don't like the fact that Tucker's critical of Israel. That's all this is. They don't actually believe that he's Hitler or that he's the most dangerous anti-Semite in the country. They just fear his influence because that's what he has, and they don't. No one knows Randy Fine outside of him making a mockery of himself, making himself look like an idiot for all of us to mock on programs like this. And hey, I'll give it to you. I'm glad to have that at my disposal to actually ridicule because it's so easy. These people make it so easy, and they're so predictable. You can just guess what's going to happen. The next wave in this campaign to call all of us anti-Semites that are critical of Israel and call us Hitlerian is if you don't post a long-winded positive eulogy toward Dick Cheney, you're going to be the new anti-Semite, right? Because Dick Cheney is so worthy of praise. Well, I'm not going to do that on this program. And, they're not going to cancel Tucker Carlson. They're not going to cancel Candace Owens, and they're not going to cancel Nick Fuentes. It's their behavior that has led to the ascension of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes. And it's not tackling ideas and, just disregarding these people, calling them vile, that has caused increased attention on their views. The same tactics that led many of them to become popular pundits when liberals did the same. That you're not worthy of debating. You're just a racist. You're just a homophobe. You're just a transphobe. Everything that we heard, in the mid-2010s, mostly around then, early to mid-2010s and forward, That's the same kind of strategy they're adopting. It's not going to work, and they're playing an old game, man. They're playing an old game that won't work. You won't cancel Tucker Carlson. So I'm totally with Glenn on this one. I think he pointed out some really interesting things, especially the irony of adopting this strategy that was exclusive to the liberal establishment for so long. And these people call us the woke right. Well, that seems like pretty, hardcore woke tactics to me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Is Glenn right about this? Will Tucker Carlson be canceled? And is it just all about Israel? Because to me, it plainly is. Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Glenn Greenwald. Thanks, Glenn. This was an awesome, awesome segment. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. And if you do that, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below, plug in your email, I'll send it right to you. No obligation, no cost, just free from me. Tells the story of how America was once a bastion of decentralized political power, then got transformed into a central world empire that is obsessed with entangling alliances like the one America has with Israel, much to the detriment of true Americans and true patriots. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.